when I was younger, I had ulcer, and the doctors just felt this was really bad. And then I just finished uni, and I was doing what they call youth service. And this in Nigeria is where you serve the nation. It's almost regimented, like you're in the army, but not exactly the army. You serve the country, you work with them, and they give you some little amount of money as your pay. So one of those days, I was in this place. It was just in a village, and there wasn't that much to do. I was a maths teacher, and that's it. You did that, and you're either playing about or going clubbing with other people, or I don't know, keep yourself busy somehow. So I was reading the Bible for that month, not because I didn't go out or do anything, but then you either get into trouble because after uni, you didn't have a proper job. You were serving the nation. They were paying you something. And yeah. So anyway, so I was studying the book of Matthew for that month. And I got to this point where I was reading. I was ill and I would have ulcer attack every single month. So much so that at some point it was getting really embarrassing because, oh, you're ill again, or you're people around, you're ill again and all of that. And this particular day, I started to feel the pain. So I was having ulcer attack and it will come and last for 3 days. It was really bad. Now I'll lose so much weight. I'll be throwing up. I'll be very unwell. So I remember reading the Bible and I got to this point where it said, and Jesus went about all the villages, healing every sickness and every disease. And I just had tears streaming down my face because I couldn't read past that. I think I'll call it a sentence in the Bible. And I cried my eyes out. And I just asked, Jesus, I'm in a village. Why haven't you healed me? And I was in so much pain. I'm your child. And I was saying things like that. I heard a voice. Now, I cannot say it was audible, but it was clear. It was an impression. And it just said, I healed you over 2,000 years ago when I died on the cross and all of that. And I stopped and I said, if you did, then I received the healing. So I just stood up with the pain. And I had friends who they had gone out to the other residences playing with, went to, said, oh, I'm going for chess. Are you coming? So I said, no. And then I thought, do you know what? I'm going to go and join them and play chess and play games and do whatever they're doing and see what happens. And so I went with the pain. But by the time I got there, I completely forgot because between the time I left my room and the time I got to where they were playing the chess, the pain had completely gone and it never, ever came back. So that was a difficult time that God helped me to overcome. And so again, I talk about anchor points a lot. Now, I didn't make up these anchor points, but I think it was something that God teaches us all the time, which I think it frustrates God when we get to a problem and we can't look back at what he has done. So I remember, I'll come back to what I'm saying in a second. I remember when the Israelites, I think they crossed the Red Sea and they went through the sea and all of that. And then they got to the other end. There was the wilderness, the manna, and they cried to God. And God was so angry that all the people who left Egypt, apart from Joshua and Caleb, the adults, all of them died in the wilderness because they didn't trust him. I think there's nothing that frustrates God more than when we lack trust in him, when we don't trust him enough. So when Joshua took them across the Jordan River, this was the next time they crossed. The Jordan parted just like the Red Sea, but he told them, so when you go through the Jordan River, take 12 stones from inside the Jordan and build a memorial outside the Jordan at the bank of the river so that children who were not yet born to you, when they come back in the future and say, hey, what is this? You tell them that these stones were taken from the middle of Jordan, that Jordan actually parted. Because we hear some things that are incredible. We hear miracles that have happened to people in the past and did it really happen? Or you read the Bible and you think maybe in those days, well, miracles, they happen now. So for me, that is where the whole concept of anchor points for me comes. So when I've gone through something difficult and I get to something else that is difficult, I tell myself, there was an anchor point. And I start teaching this, my husband and I, to the children as well. Another point was I already have two examples. So that's the whole concept of anchor points in my life. I try to use those moments to remind myself it's still the same God who did that, and he's still able to do it. Now he can choose not to do it, but that's not because he doesn't have the power to. He chooses to do it in a different way because not all prayers are answered the way we ask. Let's be honest. But at the same time, it's not because I tell God, if you don't do it, it's not because I don't trust you. It's because you chose not to do it. So there are two different things. So it's not for lack of trust in you. It's for the fact that you chose not to do it in a certain way. So there's so many examples. So that's one of them, the healing. But I remember when my son was a toddler as well, and he was about 6 months old, and then we discovered he was having what the doctors call petechiae, which is broken vessels under his skin. And so his blood, it was bleeding out of his skin in some little way. But what showed was that so they were worried and they thought he had cancer. So that was it. We flew lighted to Great Ormond Street and we were in the hospital for about 2 weeks. They were given, and so they said he was missing part of the blood. It wasn't the red blood cells, it was platelets. So they transfused platelets to him and then he would deplete it again and again. So they were like, oh yeah, this had to be leukemia and all of that. So they checked. Long story was eventually they checked it and we just went on our knees. God, he didn't give us a 6 months old just to take him away from us. My husband and I, we would pray and sing in the hospital. And the doctors would look at us like, you guys have faith. It was a very long story. Anyway, long and short of it, they did a bone marrow test. And then they said, do you know what? We prayed. Honestly, I believe that was a miracle. And they did. And they didn't find leukemia. But then again, they were now confused. So now there's a medical confusion because now we don't know what's wrong with him. Why is he depleting his platelet? And then eventually they transfused calcium and all of that. Long and short of it, they discharged him. And they said, do you know what? We don't know why he fell ill the way he did. And we still don't know why he got. It's a mystery. And we said, what a miracle for him, whatever. So those moments, every time I look at him, he's a teenager now. Yeah. Every time I look at him, I remember this point when we come into anything, we say, do you know what? Sometimes I forget. My husband will remind me and say, we went through that. We went through this. We've gone through so many moments together. There's some that I went through on my own. But since I've been married, we've gone through so many anchor points together. And we're trying to get the children to build your own anchor points. And we remind them as well. Because there's some individual victories and triumphs that they've gone through in their own little experiences. And we said, those are anchor points for you. And so, yeah, those are things that help my faith. Difficulties, God brought me through and how it's helping me now. I don't know. I hope that answers the question.